Right, but now, with prices of houses and the interest rates, they can't do
They say that by his sophomore year, he's going to and summertime. He's gathering summertime.
Want to see this before I send it out?
Sure. Well, I know. That's why I hate writing that kind of stuff. I don't write exciting.
Yeah. Station.
That's great. We can work out. Oh, that's great.
Okay, good.
right. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Riverwoods. Would you please stand and say the pledge with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Ford.
Present.
Trustee Clayton.
Here.
Trustee Dickon. Here. Trustee Eastman, is he absent?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Trustee Hollander.
Here.
Trustee Jamerson.
Here.
And Trustee Smith.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Please silence your phones.
Comma, Trustee Jamerson. First order of business is recognition of our police department on National Night Out. National Night Out is an annual event started in 1984 where communities across the country connect with law enforcement. In Riverwoods, we are very fortunate because our police department has and continues to build a solid partnership between law enforcement and our residents. Our officers are well-trained, respected, responsive, and involved. Tonight, Chief, we honor you and your department's commitment to the safety and security of our village. I believe I speak for the community when I express our sincere gratitude for your service. And if you'll all stand with me and salute our police department.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that.
Well, we appreciate you being here. And on National Night Out, we thought our officers deserved a national night in with their families. So we don't have a fest or anything like that where you'd have to be there to protect us from ourselves. We have the additional honor this evening of swearing in a new officer, Officer Christopher Lucina. And Chief, if you'd like to introduce the officer to us.
So Christopher Lucina is going to be joining us part-time, and we're very happy to welcome him. He's currently a patrol sergeant with the Northbrook Police Department, and he's been with them since 2002. He's a traffic accident reconstructionist. He's a drug recognition expert. He's a truck enforcement officer, and he's also an adjunct instructor at Oakland Community College, where he teaches various criminal justice classes. So, Chris, if you want to come up. Here.
I, Christopher Lucina,
I, Christopher Lucina,
having been appointed to the office of
having been appointed to the office of
police officer in the village of Riverwoods,
police officer in the village of Riverwood,
county of Lake,
in the county of Lake,
do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution,
the Constitution of the state of Illinois,
the Constitution of the state,
that I will faithfully discharge the duties of said office
and I will frequently discharge the duties
of the village of Riverwoods
of the village of Riverwood
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
I believe you have some family members here. Would you like to introduce them?
Yes. My wife, Christine. You can come up.
Get some pictures.
My daughter, Rachel, is a junior, going in to be a junior in Stagg High School. And my other daughter, Rebecca, who starts Augustana College this fall. Get a couple pictures. You're gonna have to get in the back row, George. Stand up.
I'm walking away. Oh, it's okay.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Nice to meet you.
And welcome. And don't let Chris, don't let Brad tell you anything bad about us. I figured that. Thank you. That's goes without saying.
When you said us, you meant you.
It's one of the best things we get to do here is swear in our police officers. And now he's signing his life away. I have no pen. Oh, well. Get an extra pen.
I did.
Oh,
Here.
thanks. Oh,
I probably won't need it. You can.
sure? You have an extra one?
I have one.
He has an extra one. He types.
Whatever. It's okay.
I list pens all the time. Thank you. Okay. All right, our first order of business is the approval of minutes of the Board of Trustees meeting of July 16th. Do I have a motion for approval, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any comments, questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Next order of business is the approval of bills. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second. Are there any questions? Comments? Roll call, please.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Dickon.
Aye.
Trustee Hellander.
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Trustee Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Director Vasquez, your report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I have just a few items for tonight's report. First, we received a thank you from the Deerfield Parent Network for the village's $2,000 donation earlier this year, which included funds towards their after-prom event. Also, we started work on the 2025 budget. I'm currently targeting October 15th as the date for our finance workshop. If that date doesn't work, please reach out to me. I've been working with the village attorney to prepare materials for the TIF Joint Review Board meetings. Right now, we're targeting August 21st as the meeting date. And then just another item is that we are doing a review of some of our banking relationships, just to see if what we have in place makes sense for us going forward and if there are other opportunities for us in terms of banking. And that's it for my report.
Are there any questions for our director? Discussion? Thank you very much. Next order of business, treasurer's report. Our treasurer isn't with us this evening, but perhaps our finance director can report on a conversation that we held about the Federal Life Project with our treasurer.
Yes, the mayor and I met recently with our village treasurer to discuss kind of making sure that we have appropriate cash on hand for anticipated expenses with the Federal Life Project and anticipate dates for closing and other work that we anticipate in the near term. So Hal has taken the necessary steps with the investment side of things to make sure that we're in good shape there.
Are there any questions? Again, this is a cash flow for the project, and we try to be conservative to make sure that we're not caught in a situation where we have to sell into a market that we don't want to sell into. Okay, thank you very much for that. Next order of business is Director Witt, Director of Community Services report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two things, really. The status of the administrative adjudication activities. The two cases that we have currently active have been officially extended to the August hearing and likely will go to be extended again to September. The attorney, Melissa Walk, is working with attorneys for both the parties and trying to work out some agreement without having to go through the courts. We have an interesting case on the first one, though, in which there was evidently a sale of the property unbeknownst to us in the midstream of the citation process. So we may be essentially starting some of that activity all over again. But it does happen no matter how well you verify things on the recorder's website. They are notorious for being behind in reporting things. So as much as we think that we are working with current information, evidently in this case, we were not. Nonetheless, violations still exist, and it'll be something that we are following up. The second item is that for the Saunders Road Improvement Project, we are looking toward the Phase 3 construction engineering services due to the funding that we are seeking from the state on this project. We are required to go out for a quality-based selection process for the engineers that will actually oversee the construction process. So we have notices out seeking statements of qualification, which are due on Tuesday, August 20th. After that date, we will select an engineering firm to do that construction observation portion of the project. And we will look to get to the second meeting in August, hopefully with a recommendation for approval for engaging that engineering firm. Other than that, I have no items.
Are there any questions for our director?
I have a question.
Trustee Dickon, please.
Yes, my question is in regards to the village's responsibility of maintenance of common areas, particularly Saunders Road. And this is something that I reached out to you about earlier last week. Saunders is a road that must be maintained by the village. It's the village's responsibility, and particularly when it comes to safety, it's something that should not be overlooked. There's an area of Saunders that curves just north of West Corus Drive that is severely overgrown with buckthorn and cattails. Both are invasive species. And this is a conversation that goes back to two of your predecessors. And this has been discussed with Pat Glenn and Carissa, but there has never been a permanent solution to maintain these areas on a regular basis. So basically what would happen is I'd send out an email saying, when you're driving, you can't see any pedestrians or bikers, and it's an accident waiting to happen. I'd like for us to establish more of a sustainable solution for these areas. So we either get rid of this buckthorn permanently, or we establish a plan where I don't have to email annually to get these areas maintained.
So I am in receipt of your email, and I'm sorry I haven't gotten back to you sooner. In the interim, we're working with the village's landscaper to get those items taken care of. However, that in itself would still be an interim solution. The long-term solution is actually the Saunders Road project improvement, which you may know is including a shared shoulder for pedestrians or joggers, or it's not intended to be a bike path, but I suppose it could be. But that in itself would provide a permanently paved surface area for different pedestrian activities. So that is the long-term solution for it. And as the project moves forward, hopefully in 2025, we'll be looking toward the permanent solution for it. So whatever we're doing at the moment.
But the question I'm bringing up is visibility of pedestrians and bikers. So, even if there is a designated path, that would not take care of the, of the pruning or elimination of the invasive species which are blocking the view.
Understood. we have to take a closer look at that. Some of the areas, we did take a look at the areas of concern. Yes, there are the cattails that are within the ditch areas, and we have to come up with a common solution for not only Saunders, but all the public roads. In that particular case, there is an area that is off to the side of the road. The areas that we're talking about particularly are at the bottom of whatever we want to call it, the depression, the ditch, however we want to call it. So there is an area there off to the side of the road. I understand there is curvature of the road, but there's only so far that we can cut things back in order to work with that. We have been considering different requirements for line of sight, particularly at intersections, and working with the village attorney and trying to determine how we can best approach that, particularly in areas where we are working with private roads. Now, public roads, we understand, are a little bit different, but nonetheless, we would look to come up with a universal solution for those items. So we are working toward that.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments for our director? Okay, thank you. Consultants report, attorneys report.
We've been having some meetings on the development of the new fire station. We had a coordination meeting today with the engineering team and consultants for the fire district, with Todd Schaefer from Hager Engineering and Director Witt, and went through just a number of issues. We have, it's just a lot to coordinate because the county's going to come in and put the road at a certain elevation, and it's going to change from the elevation that it is today. The way in which the fire district curb cut and apron meets Deerfield Road, I learned today that's called the touch point. Has to be precise because when the fire engines come onto the street, they can't bounce around. All those elevations have to be coordinated with the excavation and the grading and all this kind of work. So the engineering members of this team were very busy going back and forth on a lot of coordination issues. In the meantime, we then had a separate meeting with Lake County officials on our intergovernmental agreement. And I think Director Witt was there too. I think we're down to 2 or 3 wording issues maybe. The state's attorney had just given another pass of comments. So we'll be bringing back to this board a draft of the agreement with an explanation of what it says in terms before the next meeting. And then hopefully the 2 sides will get to a final version by the end of August. The county would like to get this ready for adoption in the course of their September meetings. I think they said September 10th was the county meeting at which they would get full approval. And we thought we'd probably be able to get it on the agenda here for September 17th. So happily, we seem to be moving towards a very good agreement with the county. And that will allow us, I think, to continue to coordinate all that we need to do to be able to close. One of the things we talked about was some of the details that we need to put in a bid package for the demolition contractor, and we'll be passing some of those details on to WB Olson once we get them more fully engaged. So that's just a brief description of trying to coordinate a lot of parties, but the only thing I can really summarize is to say that we're all working with very good collaboration, very good intent, very positive, and so far nothing major to interrupt our progress.
Any questions? Comments? Thank you. Plan Commission report, please. Chairman Brightcoff.
Good evening, everyone. The Plan Commission met on August the 1st. We held a hearing on the Riverwoods Montessori School's petition for an amendment to the special use ordinance previously granted for that parcel. The petition is to authorize construction of a second accessory building on the property, which would be a 2-car garage. The Plan Commission approved the petition with the condition that the property owner meet with neighbors to develop a plan to address neighbors' concerns about the operation of the property and the new building. Also, the Plan Commission concluded its discussion of the draft residential plan development ordinance. We approved the draft and will send our recommendation report to you very soon. Finally, the Plan Commission will hold a public hearing on August 22nd to consider a text amendment to the zoning or ordinance pertaining to the district covering the Federal Life property. That's it. Any questions?
Are there any questions for Chair Brightcoff? Thank you.
Thank you.
Zoning Board of Appeals, Chair Gratitor.
Yeah, stand, it's easier. I have nothing to report except for the fact that the scheduled ZBA meeting for the 8th, yes, has been canceled for lack of an applicant's appearance. So there will be no meeting this month, and there was no meeting last month, so nothing is new.
Back to normal?
I hope not. I was really having a good time with what was coming through, but right now it's kind of slow, and this particular applicant has failed to make an appearance, I believe, 3 times at this point where we've scheduled him on. And once was a honeymoon issue and once was an I'm busy issue. And he sent an email with his documentation that said, here's the documentation, please approve it, but I won't be there. And if we don't have an applicant for the commissioners to question, we're not going to have a meeting.
Are there any questions?
Not
Any comments? Thank you. Police report. Chief?
Mayor, I only have the police activity that is in the board packet.
Are there any questions for our chief? Thank you very much. Fire district report. Chief Kruger. Onward and upward, right? Yes. Okay, are there any questions for our Chief Kruger? Okay, thank you. Information items and comments from the president. The first item I had was the report of the residents, first annual Residents Day event. And I see one of the chairs in the audience. Would you like to report on that? Or would you like me to say that there were possibly over 200 people there and it was a great event, lots of progress?
Is it on? Yes. Okay. So the RA believed that the first Residents' Day that it hosted was very successful. At least from where we were sitting, I thought it was really good for people to come out and meet some of the organizations in the village. And I know the nominating committee had 7 interested people in running this year, which was great to see that kind of ability to get the word out that it's a caucus year. And we have not done a final count of the numbers because I'm not sure exactly why, partly because the president is in Italy, or she's on her way there, so it was not a top priority. But we estimated between 250 and 300 people, and we had about 20% no-show rate, which was a little disappointing just because of the cost. But in all, we thought it was great, and I just wanted to say that we could not have done it without the efforts of Mayor Ford. She was fabulous, and it was because of her that we could have the event. So thank you.
Good luck to the RRA. They're an important part of our community, and you're doing a great job. Next, communications issues. We put in our newsletter that we'd like to see the people respond with information about the leadership of their HOAs and SSAs to get a good list so that we can have better communications with the village with respect to not only the road program, but other things. We've gotten 2 responses. We've gotten 5 responses. Okay, so stepping right along, our clerk, Danny Moore, is taking care of that. So 5 big ones. Hoping to whatever. There was a comment made at one of the earlier board meetings that we get together a strategic planning effort for public land use. And I've communicated with both Trustee Clayton and Trustee Hollander to ask them if they would be interested and if they would co-chair such an effort. And they've agreed, but I made a mistake and I should have put this under new business so that we could have acted upon it. But that's the effort going forward, and we would like to involve our village planner. This could well end up be adding to our comprehensive plan, which would give it a little bit more teeth. So at any rate, that will be up to this committee to determine, as well as how they go about generating interest and membership. So next time we will have a formal establishment of that committee, but keep it on your radar. So the next item I had to talk about was meeting format. One of the things that we had heard over time was that we would like to have more and fuller discussions. It seems that when the board got together in executive session, we're all at the same table. Even the workshops, we would be all at the same table, and discussion seemed to be more fulsome. So trying to make room for that is one of the things that we'd like to try to do is have a consent agenda, move the meeting along a little quicker by bundling things into a consent agenda that would be reviewed prior to a board meeting, so that there would be one motion to approve, for example, the minutes, the bills, and possibly contracts for renewal of services. And the trustees would always have the opportunity to pull things from that consent agenda to discuss and to vote on separately. So we thought as maybe a start toward making our big meetings more efficient, we would try to incorporate a consent agenda. So at the next meeting, we'll give it a go with just the minutes and the bills, so that there would be one, consolidating two into one, and kind of move forward and see how that might work going forward. We have toyed with other ideas, and that would be a different configuration, so that we don't have like whiplash trying to talk to both sides of the table, and that we could see each other and, maybe discuss and bounce ideas off of each other in a little different way. So we'll see how we can accomplish that. But that was the idea of the consent agenda. Another thing that has come up since the agenda was published was earlier on this year, January, February to be exact, the board had the idea that the Plan Commission received a workshop on roles and responsibilities. And the board seemed to be of a mind to have a similar kind of workshop with Tesca Associates prior to a meeting, so that we could all talk about how things are processed and how we might go about maybe doing it better, doing it differently, what the rules are, all those kinds of things. The board was of a mind to do that. And we thought we would do it in April, but life happened, and various reasons that meeting was postponed. So I wanted to make sure that we were carrying out the board's wishes, and I'd like to bring it up again to see, we seem to have a little lull in the action, hopefully. And I was hoping maybe before the next meeting, before the August 20th meeting, because we do have a draft that was prepared by Tesca already. So prior to the August 20th meeting, I thought if the board were still of a mind to do this and had availability, perhaps we could do that next meeting. Trustee Hollander.
There's going to be a new board coming next April, and the present board members have already been in place for a couple of years. I question whether or not maybe this is a meeting we ought to have when the new board is gathered rather than doing it now. I just bring that up as a possibility of delaying, deferring it until the new board members come, because that would be, you'd have to do it again then maybe.
Twice would not be bad, but that is a good point. It's only 6 months later than what we, thought we might do it, but that is a good point. And you all are still serving until next May, so again, it's what, if the board wishes to close that item out, if you will. Another way to look at it, I suppose. Am I getting any vibes here?
I think, I think trustee Hollander has a good point, and maybe to save effort and duplicity, I think it's a good idea to delay until April.
Okay.
April or May, whenever that would be.
It'd be more like May or June.
May or June.
Yeah.
What's another month?
Between friends, right? Yeah. Delay? Do I have trustee Jamerson, trustee Dickin?
I've been doing this.
I'm
sure
just,
I could learn something.
I'm
Learn something.
just
But I
going
think we better-
over
I think we better to postpone it until
Pass.
the new board comes. I think that would be it.
trustee Clayton? I agree. Okay, we'll delay. All right. I think that's all I had tonight. So let's move on to new business. First item of new business is the approval of a proposal from Hager Engineering for professional land surveying and engineering services in an amount not to exceed $39,750. I believe we talked about this at the last meeting. Perhaps our attorney can refresh our memory in the contracting with Hager.
Well, we've been working with Todd Schaefer from Hager Engineering to do the preliminary conceptual design work for the stormwater detention facilities. He's preparing survey, subdivision plat. Actually, there's a number of surveys involved, and this kind of coordination activity that we were just discussing. This isn't the main body of his work. There will be a separate contract. Currently, with Lake County, we're negotiating to see how much of that contract would be considered services for the overall detention facility. To the extent that those services relate to the detention facility, Lake County is prepared to pay for those services as well as the detention work. So this particular approval is really for work that's more unique to the village and the fire district and not to the stormwater facility. There will be a subsequent proposal from Hager for the rest of the serious drainage design work. But we need him right now because he's doing a lot for us.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Trustee Clayton, you were, okay.
I'm just
Are
going to
there
move.
any
for
questions or
approval.
comments?
Is this kind of where we thought the budget was going to be for this work?
So far, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments? Roll call, please.
Dickin.
Aye.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Trustee Smith.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item is approval of a proposal from WB Olson for Phase 1 pre-construction manager services for the demolition of the Federal Life Building project in an amount not to exceed $15,000. If I may ask Director Witt to address this.
Certainly, Mayor. The mayor, myself, Director Vasquez, and Attorney Hubert each met with, as a group, with 3 different firms that we have become aware of through other similar type of projects, some word of mouth, and certainly WB Olson with the experience that we've had with construction of this particular building that we sit in tonight. And of the 3 of them, we felt that WB Olson was the most responsive and conducive to the work we're trying to do with regard to taking down the Federal Life Building and rebuilding the area that the building sits on, so that the fire district can proceed with construction of their building. So what we have in front of us tonight is an approval for a proposal which we received from WB Olson in the amount of not to exceed $15,000, which would get us through the pre-construction services, which would lead us to have them work with the engineers, village staff in preparing bid documents for demolition of the existing building and work that's related to not only building up the pad, but potentially even doing some of the work on excavation for the detention basin. That would also take it to a point where they bid the project out and work with us on selection of a demolition contractor for the project. After that, we would look at a separate contract to get through construction, observation, and management services, potentially by them as well. So the piece that we have in place for tonight is really strictly for the pre-construction services.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions? Trustee Jamerson, please.
I have a question, and it's not really again about the pre-construction work, and maybe we can wait on this for the actual construction, but part of their proposal has compensation for the construction side of it. And I guess the two questions I have is, they list general liability insurance as 1% of the construction cost for the project. And I guess the question is that going to be included in their 7% fee, assuming the work is up to $700,000, or in any other fees? And the other question is the GMP, and this is on page 34 of the packet, I believe, is the GMP will include a 5% construction contingency for the construction managers used during construction. The only comment there would be to make sure that the construction manager's determination of use of that money is passed by someone from the village, so that they don't just use up the construction contingency. I have all the faith in the world in WB Olson. I mean, I don't think they're going to try and take us in any way. But I just want to make sure that if there's a 5% contingency, that the village is the one who says it's okay for them to use that fee. And it's not something that's part of what we're voting on tonight, but it's something to keep in mind for the next stage.
Okay, so if I can answer those in reverse order.
Okay.
I would personally be working directly with WB Olson, at least in an oversight position, to understand the activities and get weekly reporting from them to understand what's happening on site. So none of that contingency would be authorized for use. That would be explicit within whatever contractual relationships we have with them without village approval. And I specifically asked Dave Olson with regard to your first question, and the answer that I got from him is that 1% for the general liability insurance would actually be above and beyond the proposed fee structure that they have listed here based on the actual construction cost.
Okay. And that's what I thought the answer was going to be, but okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Trustee Smith.
So my question is I did not see included their limits of liability. Was that part of their proposed, and maybe I missed it? I just want to make sure that they meet the village standards.
What they proposed is that they would use one of the AIA forms of a contract, and there'll be an insurance schedule, and we'll make sure that they comply with the village requirements.
And they did in the past when we did this building. There was no problem with their insurance.
Any other questions or comments for Director Witt? Roll call, please.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson. Trustee Smith.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Dickon.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item, approval of a proposal from AVI Systems for purchase and installation of wireless microphones in the boardroom in an amount not to exceed $41,543. Director Vasquez, if you could lead us through that, please.
Yes. The village boardroom currently uses wired microphones. The original intention of this room was to be easy to break down, move furniture for other uses and other groups. The wired microphones have made this difficult and at times have been time-consuming for staff to break down and put back in place. Because most of the tables have wired microphone equipment attached to them, we are either limited in which tables can be used for other meetings or events, or we have to find ways to minimize potential damage to our AV equipment. After some technical issues we had earlier this year with the current system in place, our staff sought out quotes for multiple vendors to look into what a wireless solution might look like. We received quotes from AVI and Malco. These two vendors were selected because of their familiarity with our current setup, as well as their capability to integrate with our Crestron system. Both AVI and Malco recommended a Shure wireless microphone system. Each quote was for 16 wireless microphones, which would allow us to have individual microphones for the board, staff, consultants, and multiple guest presenters. The proposed wireless microphone system is in use by the villages of Winnetka, Carroll Stream, and Warrenville. I spoke with the assistant managers of both Winnetka and Warrenville to see that they're both happy with those systems that are in place. The rechargeable batteries that would be part of this system can be replaced without replacing the entire base. The AVI quote received for all this was $41,543, while the Malco quote came in at $48,910.35. Again, this boardroom is used for many purposes such as elections, committee meetings, HOA meetings, RRA events, the village's garage sale, annual appreciation lunch, and so on. By having a wireless microphone system in place, we can help ensure that this room is more versatile for a variety of groups and residents. That said, since a number of projects that were part of the 2024 capital funds budget are not moving forward this year, we recognize that we do have capacity in that budget for that purchase this year. So again, before you tonight is the proposal with AVI Systems for the wireless microphone system for $41,543.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second? Would you like to discuss it before we don't have a second?
Well, I'll second it so we can go to discussion.
Okay. Trustee Jamerson.
So I'd like to, there's a lot of people in this room who were not part of the construction of this building. AVI Systems installed the original sound system in this room. It was originally designed by them with wireless microphones that failed miserably. There are things in this proposal that are necessary for the wireless mics that probably should have been in their original design of this building, and they didn't put them in. And the reason we have these wired mics is because we had so much trouble with the wireless system. I'm not saying we shouldn't have a wireless system. I agree with everything you said. This room was designed to be multi-purpose because it's really the only multi-purpose room we have in the entire village. My concern is AVI has, in my opinion, not been the best vendor for the village. I'm not suggesting we go to Malco because I know you've had issues with them as well. But in my opinion, some of this stuff, you know, whether this equipment should have been part of the original design and they used substandard equipment. I know the reason we had trouble with the microphones is because the battery charging, well, first of all, they were end-of-life microphones. They sold us end-of-life equipment, and they ended their life very quickly. So I'm not opposed to doing the work. I think it's probably the smart thing to do. I'm just opposed to using AVI as the vendor.
Trustee Smith?
So I've heard from some meeting attendees, not specifically at this meeting tonight, but at other meetings, about difficulty to hear when you're sitting in the audience. My question is, would this improve the sound quality either within this room or via this Zoom or however we web stream this, or is this really a convenience factor, which seems like a lot of money for convenience to me?
To answer that, I don't believe it would improve the sound quality. It's just changing from the wired system to wireless system, because it does not address speakers setup or anything like that.
Thank you.
Trustee Dickon?
2 questions. This is a lot of money, but thank you for undertaking this because I do see the need. My first question is, how many times per year does the room need to be rearranged to justify this expense? And at what point would this amortize? Meaning, are we going to be getting microphones with an end of life of 2 years? Because technology is evolving very quickly, and will there be support available for outdated systems?
We have the garage sale coming up. Just to answer the question very quickly.
That's one. Okay.
That's one.
Yeah.
We tried to have the first sustainability committee meeting in here.
Does that need rearrangement of the room?
And it needed a rearrangement, yes. And the election is coming up. That needs rearranging. We have the American Youth Soccer Organization coming in for training sessions on a weekend in September, I believe. That's going to require
Should they
us doing
pitch in
something.
perhaps?
Pardon me?
Should they perhaps pitch in for the expense?
No.
No. But I'm saying that, this is not
just
necessarily
point of-
for the
point of
village,
information.
right? This is for an outside organization that we're
A
putting this
resident,
expense in.
is chairman of this organization, and we've made the room available for residents' use and resident associated activities. It's not something we hold out to people because it is difficult to deal with. We acknowledge that, yes, we have to move them around and store them flat because we can't store them out here, and we want to be very mindful of not having anything happen to them. We could have more activities, but for the fact that we have to keep moving the tables around, and it's kind of hard. What I would draw to your attention with respect to AVI in particular is we had our 2 conference rooms revised so that we have actually now cameras that can see everybody in a virtual meeting. You can explain this better than I can, and you know it. But we had both of those rewired and connected up, and AVI did a very good job with that. And the thing that I would add is at one point in time, maybe it was 2 years ago now, we did have someone from APT come in and try to make the acoustics in here better. And it involves, it was tens of thousands of dollars in order to put up not screening, but
panels.
Fabric panels here and then up there and so on. So acoustically, we're challenged, and we acknowledge that. It's just a step in the direction of, I mentioned before, if we could angle these tables a little bit so that we could see each other when we talk, that could help, with discussions as well. So there, pluses and minuses on all the sides here. I think we're all saying, yeah, we need to do something, but what is it?
So, sorry.
Trustee Clayton.
Well, if putting up panels is tens of thousands of dollars, these microphones are tens of thousands of dollars. Is there any sense in trying to get an integrated solution, something that talks about the acoustics of the room and the electronics and everything, someone who knows how to do the entire thing, and then that person can recommend a vendor to us? Is there any sense in doing it that way?
Are you proposing like an AV third-party experts to take a look at, again, the acoustic situation in general?
Well, the acoustics combined with the microphone. I mean, I'm listening to the meeting right now through my hearing aids, and I can hear perfectly, but I think the people in the audience probably can't hear very well at all. the microphones aren't
You
going to
need,
change
you need to
that.
have the microphone like right up here, though.
Yeah,
if I
I mean,
might
the microphones
suggest.
aren't going to change that, I don't think, that whether they're wireless or wired. So wouldn't it make, the biggest problem to me is the acoustics of the room. The second problem is the ability to change the room for the various functions that have to go in a multi-use room like this. Why don't we look for an integrated solution for all of that in one fell swoop? If such a thing exists.
We can explore.
Trustee Hollander, do you want?
Yeah, we've been talking about the acoustics of this room for years now. And if we want people to come to meetings, they have a right to be able to hear what's being said here. And I, for one, do not want to spend any money to increase the microphone purchase if someone can't hear it. So before I would want to vote for new microphones, I'd want to have the ability to hear what's being said in those microphones. Now, Zoom works well, but that's because it's working off a different system, but not for the audience. So I would be against any proposal unless we can fix the acoustics.
I do have a little bit of experience with real estate clients who have worked with acousticians, companies that specialize in looking at situations like this. So it is a possibility.
What was his name, Professor Thunder or
Oh,
something
that was the
like
one.
that? Yes. I think we actually tried to contact him at that point in
I
time.
talked to him.
Well, we thought this might be a step in the direction of, you know, just moving forward in some fashion. Granted, the acoustics do need reviewing.
I can just make
Trustee
one more
Jamerson.
comment. I don't think that an acoustical consultant would have an issue with the proposal for the wireless mics. I don't think they would. I don't think that's going to make any difference in what they do with the acoustics in this room. There's a lot of hard surfaces in here, and you know that's why you can't hear in the audience. So I don't think the microphones are necessarily going to be an issue one way or the other. I don't think the acoustic engineer is going to come back and say you shouldn't have done that. So I just have a problem with ABI, and maybe that's my personal problem, but I don't think they served the village well the first time. Their contract was over $150,000 and for this building, and they designed the system. It was a design build system. So that's only my only concern. I would also like to say there are some, you know, if we get rid of these microphones, no matter who does it, we should keep these microphones and and then either auction them off with some of the police stuff or whatever we can do to get some more money, because these are still microphones that are in use in many, many places. It's just, this isn't the right application for them.
Trustee Hollander.
I agree with Trustee Jamerson that I think these microphones would not interfere with that, but it's the only leverage I have to get the village to address the issue, which we've been talking about for years. And so that's my purpose.
Chief.
So I did work with Tony on this in getting bids, and it wasn't that easy to get bids. I mean, there was one company that wouldn't even give us a quote. And, but I do know that ABI was, I forget how many years ago, we built Village Hall, but I know this is a different team that Tony's been working with, that he worked with when he was in Winnetka. And, you know, and he did do his due diligence in seeing where else these microphones were installed by ABI, and they all gave glowing reports, is my understanding. So I'm not sure where else to go. I think and I helped put the room back together not long ago, and it's a chore. And so I'd like to do something, and I wasn't particularly happy with Malco either. I've been dealing with Malco, but they did give us a quote. So
And again, AVI did do some work for us recently in our 2 conference rooms down the hall, and that's all been working flawlessly. So if people are for getting wireless microphones, at some point, I'm not sure where else to go, other than the quotes that we have.
Trustee Smith?
So what I was going to suggest was perhaps instead of declining the quote or not proceeding with the quote, we penned it till this acoustical review so we can try and solve all problems at once. Is that, because I've heard from numerous attendees that you can't hear. So I think spending 40 grand on microphones might help the convenience and the ease of moving stuff around. But like some other people have mentioned, it does feel like the acoustical nature of the space is more important and a higher priority. So maybe we just stagger them, do the acoustical review, make sure that it aligns with what that acoustical consultant suggests, recommends, whatever, and then we kind of proceed on that basis. Is that possible, Chief Dano? Or Tony?
Anything's possible.
Right. So part of why this was brought tonight is when the chief and I worked to get these quotes earlier this year, it was kind of in anticipation, starting to think about 2025 budget ahead of time, and then getting to this point in the year and realizing we had some capital projects that weren't moving forward. We thought, well, maybe we can bring this now. We can certainly look into companies such as what Attorney Huvard brought up, where an expert that can come in and kind of help diagnose ideas for helping make this room better for people in the audience, everyone in attendance to hear. We can seek that out. I'm not sure how many vendors there are out there that can do that in that area and the kind of cost, but we can certainly seek out vendors that can help us at least get quotes.
And I think, quite honestly, to me, sorry to keep talking, but that feels like a logical first step. And if the answer is nothing happens or it's a gazillion dollars, we say, okay, wireless microphones. But I'd like to know the answer, or at least the potential, before approving a wireless microphones for $42,000. That's just me, though.
Trustee Clayton.
Just a question for Trustee Jamerson. Does the fact that we have different people working on the project with regard to AVI, does that ameliorate any of your concerns? That is this really team oriented in terms of who works on the project, and we've had some good experience with the current team?
The only issue with switching teams is that the Crestron system, which controls all of this, there's a program behind everything in this room. And AVI did the original program, and then Malco, when they came in and did this wired solution, had to basically rewrite the program because they couldn't get all the information from AVI at the time. And then I think AVI has since gotten the program that Malco wrote. Tell me if I'm wrong, Director, but I think AVI got the program from Malco eventually, so that they could do the stuff in the 2 conference rooms.
Right. So now, learning more about how the system works, the chief and I have worked with Malco to get the programming into the village's hands. So we have
and it
a
should
copy
be
of
in our hands.
So we have that saved in our servers here, and because that type of computer knowledge is beyond us, we did, when AVI came out here to give the quote, we said, here is the programming that Malco has given us. Can you look at it and let us know, is this what you need to do the work that needs to be done if you were to put microphones or other types of projects in here? And they did look, and they said, you got the right thing. And they also told us that that was essentially it. We received the right programming, so that if we were going to work with, whether it was them or any other vendor in the future, we have it here to supply.
right? So that's the only issue there. I would suggest, as long as I'm still talking,
Oh, please.
well, I mean,
No, trustee Jamerson.
thank you. You should call WB Olson and ask them for consultants, get them to give you a list of consultants. We did a project with WB Olson at North Park University for a music building that was, the acoustician was like the major player. So I'm sure they can give you some leads on consultants in that field and maybe even some sound consultants, or sound companies.
Yeah, I just forwarded you a contact for Carp Designs. It's a company that I worked with personally about a decade ago. That's what they specialize in, and they've done a lot of spaces, including the City Winery, which is also a very complex space to mitigate in terms of acoustics because it's all wine bottles.
Well, I'll have to go back in my notes and see what we got from AMPT on this, because we did have somebody in, and they did talk to us about what that would be. So we can add that to the list as well. I know it was very expensive, and I don't recall if we even brought it to the board. We may well have, so we'll research that as well. So at this point, am I hearing from the board, rather than, you want to table the motion?
Don't you
Is
have
that
just
the- is that the
withdraw?
wish, or
Don't
do you
have
want
a
to go
motion on the
ahead?
floor?
Yeah, and a second. Maybe we should just withdraw.
So you
it.
need, don't
I'm
you
sorry,
don't
say
need to
again?
act
Is it
on
better
that?
to just withdraw the motion or table it? I don't know.
You can withdraw the motion, or someone can move to table the motion even though the motion's on the floor, or you can just withdraw the motion and. Yes.
Right.
So.
Apparently, you're not going to vote for it, so maybe we just delay it.
Who made the
and,
motion? Who made the
withdraw
first motion?
motion? Just was.
I'll withdraw the second.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Good luck with the garage sale, Randy. Yeah, figure that out. Okay, the next item is approval of a proposal from Urban Forest Management for a survey of hazardous trees in an amount not to exceed, have I got the right number in there?
Oh, I'm sorry.
12,900?
It's not the last thing. I'm sorry.
Item D.
Yeah.
Next item.
Sorry, my bad.
It's okay. Is there a motion for approval of the urban forest contract?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And discussion. Village Attorney, would you like to?
I just want to mention that this is partly in response to the incident that happened a couple of weeks ago where a tree fell on a resident. We did look up, it had been 3 years since we did the last hazardous tree survey. About every 3 years is not unreasonable.
Yeah.
And it takes, as I said, it takes a while to do them. And then we have to coordinate with residents because you try and do it over the winter. So this is, if we approve this now, by the time we do the survey and go through all the steps, we're probably looking at working with residents through the winter and into the spring to get this done.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none? Roll call, please.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Trustee Smith.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Dickin.
Aye.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, next on the agenda are two resolutions. The first is an approval of a resolution appointing Village President Chris Ford as director and former Village President John Norris and Trustee Smith as alternate directors to the Solid Waste Agency of Lake County, Illinois. Do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Trustee Hollander.
How many alternate directors do we need?
We don't, but
So-
there's some technical stuff about who can be a member of SWALCO, and John is a very important member of SWALCO and has been for a number of years, and we need an alternate to John. So it's kind of, I just don't attend, and John handles all the business of SWALCO. And we thought with the Sustainability Committee and Trustee Smith being so involved there, that would be a good connection as well. So there are two functional members.
Neither one being you.
Wow.
Did I get it? Did I hit it?
I
What?
can't believe he said that.
Oh, well, sorry. It wasn't meant like that. Is there any discussion at all past that? Okay. Resolution, so I think we need a roll call, please.
Trustee Smith.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Dickon.
Aye.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All
The
right.
resolution 240804.
Okay, thank you. Next resolution, approval of a resolution allocating motor fuel tax funds for snow removal for the 2024 snow removal season. Director Vasquez, if you can lead us through this discussion, please.
Yes, so for the 2024 budget, there was $140,000 budgeted in the MFT fund for snow removal. As I've gone through various documents and work here over the year, I discovered that essentially there are forms that IDOT requires you to fill out even though we budget the amount and the board approved it, there are still forms from IDOT that we should be filling out to let IDOT know that we intend to use these MFT funds in a certain way. And with the board's approval of this document, we'll start that process, because going back at least several years, this has not been done. So we've been working with both IDOT, and I worked with GHA, because in the past, village engineers have helped me to get this documentation submitted. So this is just kind of some house cleaning of doing these documents that we should be doing whenever we're allocating MFT funds to be used for certain things.
Trustee Smith.
Director Vasquez, so the question in my mind is, since these are MFT funds, do we have the ability, let's just say there's no snow this year or another light snow year, do we have the ability to then re-budget those dollars somewhere else, or once they're there, are they locked in?
So it comes down to two things. So the board, when they approve the MFT budget, they're approving specific line items. So for this year, there was $140,000 for snow removal, and there was $50,000 just in case for potential engineering of road projects. If we were to fill out this paperwork for IDOT and there was no snow, we could go back to IDOT with a supplemental form asking to use the funds for some other type of work that is approved for MFT funds, which is pretty limited to improvements to roads, making roads passable, and so on. So what we'll do, whether we spend every dollar of it or none of it, is at the end of the season, we'll compile our records, and there'll be another form we send to IDOT letting them know that, oh, IDOT approved us to use up to $140,000 for this. We only used $50,000 or $60,000, just so IDOT has it for their records.
But then the dollars flow back to the village?
Right, the village receives an allocation of our MFT funds monthly in a separate account that accumulates over time. So that if we don't spend it, that money remains there for use for other projects.
That's really what I was asking. Thank you.
Yeah, road projects. Trustee Jamerson.
So this is for 2 years, I see.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess the question I have, I was under the impression that we were going to use the MFT.
Is your microphone on?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm the one that always tells people to turn their microphones on too. I apologize. This is for 2 years. And I was under the understanding that we were saving the MFT funds to use for Saunders Road improvement. Is that, can you talk?
Yeah, but then we we decided that because we could use MFT funds for snow removal, that we would continue to use the MFT for snow removal, and then the remainder would be set aside and saved for that project. And as a matter of fact, I think we've accumulated enough in the MFT fund at this particular point that we're on pretty solid ground with regard to that.
Okay, and then, this is a sore subject, has it been in the past? Sorry, I'm being such a pain tonight.
No, go ahead.
Is it, these funds are being used for the public roads. And so the people that are on private roads, which is more than half of the village, are basically subsidizing the residences that are on the public roads.
So are non-residents, by the way.
Yeah, I know anybody that's filling up in Riverwoods.
Right.
I get that. But, okay, that's.
Are there any other comments or questions? I did ask for a motion for approval, right? Yeah.
I have a question.
Trustee Hollander?
It's my understanding that we don't ever have enough MFT funds, that we could spend all that we get based on our road projects, which are high dollar projects. And is there an advantage to us for using the MFT funds for snow removal versus saving it for actual road projects? The reason I ask that is because there is this in the background, the idea of plowing certain roads and not others, as well as the cost of snow removal based on our prior contracting over the years has been, let's say, sometimes problematic. And I'm wondering if we use MFT funds that we sort of lose control than if we're using general funds.
Well, I think overall, the village's intention of how to use the MFT funds is probably a good discussion for the finance workshop on a long-term basis. But the village has a handful of public roads that are a responsibility. Some of those are very large roads that when they are due for major projects, those are expensive projects. There's certainly a good argument to be made that generally you should have an idea of what your snow removal costs would be. You can, to a certain extent, control that in the general fund. You budget conservatively because you don't know if you're going to have a winter with 3 events or a winter with 30 events. But then you know that all of the MFT revenue that's coming in is being built up. You might be, I don't have the schedule in front of me, but you might know that your next major road project is 5 years out. And you have a general idea of what to expect in those 5 years conservatively of what's going to come in via MFT fund revenue in that time. So you can use it to plan in that way, certainly.
Trustee Clayton.
If we don't use these funds out of the MFT fund, they're going to come out of the general fund.
Correct.
So the issue that Trustee Jamerson raised is going to be the issue whether that comes out of the general fund or whether it comes out of the MFT fund. The advantage of using the MFT fund for snow removal is that it's in the here and now. It's an actual expense as opposed to something that's planned for the future. So you can use those funds in such a way that you can continue to build for these other projects over time. But in the short run, when you actually have a cash requirement, you're relieving the general fund of the burden of having to pay for the snow removal on something that's legally defined to be acceptable for MFT, use of MFT funds.
That was helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, roll call, please. Oh, I thought there was.
So
Sorry.
moved.
Is there a second? Okay, thank you, sorry. Roll call, please.
Trustee Clayton?
Aye.
Trustee Dickens?
Aye.
Trustee Hollander?
Aye.
Trustee Smith?
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson?
Aye.
Resolution 240805.
Okay, thank you. Last item of new business, approval of an ordinance amending and restating provisions of the Riverwoods Village Code concerning diseased and hazardous trees. Do I have a motion for first reading?
Oh, that's what I was going to suggest.
Just first reading?
Well,
Or waiving? What would you
Waiving,
like?
to waive first reading.
I'll make a motion that we waive first reading.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
I would like to discuss that. If we're going to
The
waive
first
first
reading?
reading.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I think there are some provisions of this that I would prefer to have a little more time to consider, and rather than, I mean, I've seen this document for 3 or 4 days, and I have some concerns. Let me, for example, the Director of Community Services within the ordinance is not a defined term. So it's not someone who is necessarily appointed by the mayor and ratified by the board. We are giving a lot of discretionary authority to a non-elected official, and I think that in some regard, we should have the safeguards in there to say, okay, Russ, you're now the Director of Community Services. You could go walk over onto that property, onto private property over there, and you could do, under the guise of looking for hazardous trees, you could be, and I'm also concerned about the fact that the the Director of Community Services has the authority to enforce this and can designate any other village representative to be able to go on private property.
Can I make a suggestion?
I would just like to,
Yeah.
just to have a week or two. I mean, all these questions may be
Okay.
perfectly fine,
I agree.
but I would just not like to waive first reading, if that's okay.
Oh, all right.
And I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. All right. That's fine.
Could we
So I will
just
make-
have a motion?
I
for
will
first
make a
reading?
motion for first reading,
Second.
not to waive it,
Oh, for first.
for first reading.
Check. I'm not going to be a parliamentarian. Have you figured that out yet? Okay. Discussion, please.
May I say a few things about this ordinance?
You absolutely can.
I'm sorry, I should have seen that there's no urgency for second reading tonight, and I just missed that in the agenda, so that's my bad. We should take our time with this because it won't matter if we pass it, tonight or in 2 weeks we have time, so I'm sorry. The memo in the board packet tries to explain why we're trying to update the ordinance. I hope it was helpful. Some of you were on the board. I don't recall how many the last time around, but we had some residents challenging our ability to interpret what a dangerous tree was, and we also had provisions that provided for an appeal to the village board. So we actually found ourselves in the position where a resident was appearing before the village board to contest whether or not there was a hazardous tree. So we tried to address those things. I think that what would be helpful is if you have questions, if you can, maybe put a list together, maybe funnel them through Director Witt, and I'll collect all the questions and be better prepared to answer them, in a coordinated fashion rather than, kind of ad hoc. And then, maybe discuss it more fully at the next meeting.
Trustee Hollander.
Is there any desire to have an obligation by the village to perform a survey every 3 years or 5 years? We do it, but we do it when we think about it and maybe when we've had some pressure or as we had last time, an incident. I'm wondering whether or not if we're going to redo this ordinance that we ought to put some obligation in the village that the survey should occur no less than every X number of years. I understand that puts us under some obligation and a future board can change it. But it's a two-way street that we have an obligation to check on the trees as much as the residents do.
So in order to protect the village from unwanted tort liability, there are standards that that discuss whether the village's is failing to do something which is supposed to be routine and administrative or is a policy choice. When a village board makes a decision, for example, not to fix a public path because they're going to repave it in a year, and that's a policy decision, that's a legislative judgment that's given greater deference. If the village says, by golly, we're going to do something every 2 years, it's part of our program, they fail to do it, they can get in a little bit of hot water. So I understand the spirit of wanting to say the village is going to be careful, but it's probably more protective for the village to have some discretion in setting the policy of when these occur. We may want them to occur more often on occasion, or we may find a reason, not to do it precisely every 2 years. And I don't know exactly what the right, period would be. So we can't talk about that further, but my instinct is not to tie the village to a particular schedule for something that needs a little bit of legislative judgment.
I understand that, and under most circumstances, I wouldn't even bring it up. But what we're doing is we're putting an onus on the owners in this ordinance, which is fairly strong, and it says if you don't do something, we're going to do it and charge you for it. And this is a big deal in Riverwoods, the idea of maintaining the trees and keeping them in shape. So I'm not sure whether this is the one to say it's worth taking the risk against a future legal action, or whether or not we ought to follow our village attorney's advice and not put us under that risk. But I at least would like to bring it up that the village, in my mind, has some responsibility to do a survey periodically. And if we're not going to make it on a regular basis for legal reasons, I understand that.
Any other comments or questions at this point? Well, if you could organize your questions perhaps and send them in via email, we can, Trustee Clayton? Yeah, why don't you send them both to village attorney and to Director Witt? But not to each other, please. And we'll aggregate them and try to address them at the next meeting, which is getting longer. We did to waive first reading. Just for first reading.
A voice vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? Same sign, okay. There's no old business. Visitors wishing to address the board.
Good evening, Randy Merrill, Riverwoods Preservation Council. I don't know if you heard, but we're going to have a garage sale here on Saturday. So we have 14 residents. Yeah, if we're lucky. We have 14 residents, and many of those residents have asked to have more than one table space, so we will have 27 tables of goodies. Additionally, in the month of September, we're going to have our native plants sale. We sent out emails to all the residents to pre-order plants, and then we hope to have also some inventory that they can buy at the event. We are going to offer a barbecue food. We will have some hamburgers, and we'll probably have some vegetarian options as well. Unfortunately, we are not going to have music because North Shoreline does so. And then in October, we're going to have our Recycle-O-Rama, our recycle event. We also sent out information in our last newsletter on that. And one thing that we are considering but haven't committed to is having a shredding vehicle there, a shredding truck. We did that 2 years ago. We had a fair response. The truck was not full, so there was still room, and we have to rent it. It costs around $800. Swalco has said that they would pick up a portion of it. They'd pick up half of it, but we have to determine whether or not that is a good financial decision and whether our PC handle that or the village wants to help us offset that. We do a two-way, maybe, perhaps. I also reached out, or also using Swalco, Merlan Rampel, to see if Bannockburn would like to also partner with us on that, because we reach out to all the neighboring communities to participate in the recycle event. It is not just Riverwoods only. And when we look at a log, we get about probably 14 to 17 different communities that are bringing clothing here and books. We're going to recycle books. So a lot of people participate. So we thought if that could be something that we partner, or maybe Deerfield, and we all kind of share the expense, then it's for sure worthwhile. So if you guys know any communities that we should reach out to, we'd be happy to do so.
So you have not made contact with the other communities at this point?
So Merland reached out to Bannockburn, and they said they would get back to her if they were interested, and they have not gotten back to her. I'm happy to personally make a call to Bannockburn. I've talked to them. They did a composting event, and I asked if Riverwoods residents can go and also pick up compost, and they were absolutely sure. I think the gentleman's name was Sam, and then the last name escapes me. He used to work with Lincolnshire. So I think I'd like to certainly make an attempt of personally calling him and asking them, but that would certainly help ease the cost.
Let's see if we can get you some contacts at Deerfield and Lincolnshire. We've been working with Lincolnshire on some other ideas lately.
Great.
So let's see if we can't reach out that way.
Terrific. Thank you.
Is there anybody else wishing to address the board? Should I call you by name? Okay, moving on, committee reports. Finance and Economic Development, Trustee Clayton, please.
The Finance Committee met. We are, as you heard during Trustee Vasquez's report, there was some discussion about banking relationships and how to move forward with that. We also talked about the response to the audit questions, and I owe the board a report on what we concluded with regard to each one of the concerns. And I think you'll find that each one of them is being adequately taken care of, and we'll be happy with what we're doing. And we also discussed briefly the importance of addressing the water fund, and I think that's about it. So more to come from us on that.
Are there any questions for Trustee Clayton? Okay, communications, Trustee Dicken, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a brief update. If you recall, 3 years ago when we signed the contract for the village website, the company with which we signed the contract was bought by the 600-pound gorilla called Civic Plus, which is the nation's largest municipal website developer. And they have promised to switch over all of their new clients onto their back-end system. And now the time has come, 3 years down the road. They're going to be switching us over and upgrading us from Drupal 7 to Drupal 10. This is the back-end of the website. And on the outside, there should not be any disturbance. This should be completely seamless. They had offered training, but in consulting with our chief of technology, also known as our chief of police, we've decided to postpone training until we get closer to the upgrade date, just so that we get better retention of information. They said end of August. If it were up to me, I'd prefer that we do this after Labor Day, just because people end up on vacation, and if God forbid something happens, we'll have more support available to us. Everything that we currently have on the website will be transferred over, so the newsletter, the online forms and applications. In terms of improvements, visually, some things will be a little more appealing, such as the calendar. Meetings and news, just visually things will look a little bit more modern, and there will be a little more improvement that are more intuitive on the back end, but nothing that the public would notice. That's all I've got.
Are there any questions for Trustee Dicken? Okay, seeing none, moving on. Trustee Eastman isn't here with us this evening. I can say that we have been in touch in contact and working forward with the South Lake Mosquito Abatement District, and we have 2 residents that have volunteered to be on their decennial committee. And the next meeting is next Monday, I think. So we're moving forward with that, and hopefully we won't have any disruption in our South Lake Mosquito Abatement District. Are there any questions on that? Land use, Trustee Hollander, please.
No report.
Next, building, Trustee Jamerson, please.
Report is in the packet. Just twice. The report is in the packet. We are, just as a benchmark, in 2022, we had $10 million, just a little over $10 million in construction value put in place via permits. 2023, it was a hair more. And right now, we're about $1 million behind that, but that's all good. There's a lot happening in the building department. They're very, very busy. So, ahead. Behind this year, we're at 9.4 million right now, as the end of July, instead of 10.3 million for the last 2 years, basically. So, but they're very busy in the building department. We've got a new house. There's a demo of a house that probably means there's going to be a new house coming. So,
Are there any questions? Trustee Hollander, please.
Do we have any access to statistics that tell us, or at least we used to, how long a house is on the market, how many houses are up for sale, how many houses are sold in Riverwoods? In the past, there's been an impression that Riverwoods, that houses are on the market for a long time, and that it sometimes is difficult to sell a house in Riverwoods because of the narrower potential client. I haven't seen that for a while. Is it because I haven't been looking, or it hasn't been, it's available?
I don't think we've ever really formally had that. I personally keep track of, I look at Zillow about every week just to see what's going on. And for a while, about 2 months ago, there was like 4 houses in Riverwoods for sale. And now there's about 15, I think. I don't have an idea of how long they stay on there because I just don't have the time to do a spreadsheet, but
Yeah, no, are you talking about the realtor's report that I think we all get?
yeah. I mean, I get one in the mail, if that's what you're
That's
talking
just a
about.
single,
Yeah,
yes,
it's like a
that was,
postcard.
yeah.
That's the only one. It's Florentino or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah. And those aren't their houses that they sell. I found out that's just everybody's. That's all for.
Really?
It's not theirs.
Really?
That's the only thing. We don't really have a real estate connection that can get us that. I'm sure there is, that information's available. I just don't.
I think we could just pull it off of Redfin. I'm looking right now.
Can you? Okay. Well, that'd be a good thing for the communication department.
I think that'd be a building department thing.
Excellent. So the real estate report then, Trustee Dickon?
I'll look into that. I'll look into it. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Community Services, Trustee Smith, please.
Yeah, sure. So still working on the Hefty Renew rollout program that's going to start, I believe it was end of September. I've passed some preliminary communication materials to Trustee Dickon. We're expecting more, like a press packet and things like that. So as I get it, I will, of course, forward that along so we can put it on the website. And then the other thing is, of course, we're making progress with sustainability, but I know they're on the agenda next, so I'll leave that to them.
Any questions for Trustee Smith? Okay. Sustainability and Climate Action Committee. Chairs Brightcoff and Favaro. Okay, I thought you were going to do it, but that's fine. So we are reaching the end of going through the greenest framework. It was pretty tedious, like 32 pages or so. So we're down to the last page, which is exciting because then we're going to break into subcommittees and go through and actually try to formulate a plan and an actual something that we can then bring to the board to have a discussion about sustainability and climate for the village. And the subcommittees, we have quite a few people on the subcommittees. So I think, we're looking good.
I think that about says it. We're moving into a more exciting phase. It was a big slog to go through the Greenest Region Compact Framework, but now we're going to talk about priorities and put them together in a plan that's comprehensive and answer any questions that you have, and you can take it from there. I think it's going to take us another month or so, maybe 2.
And your meetings are still the third Tuesday? No,
the second
Tuesday.
The second and fourth
Tuesdays,
fourth. Yes.
Okay.
Of every month.
All right, gaining new members?
No.
Well, we haven't really looked for any new members, but we've only lost a couple of people. So a couple people weren't going through the framework with us, but now they're coming back to the subcommittee level.
That's great.
So, which is great. And I don't know if we needed anybody else. I'm sure we could recruit more, but I think that all of the subcommittees have a good amount of people on them.
Perfect. Are there any questions for our chairs? Thank you. Seeing no reason to go into executive session, the next time and date is for our next meeting is August 20th, 7:30. Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Good night.